So, first of all, what is entrepreneurship for all of you? So, if we go by the Google definition, it's the ability or the readiness to develop, organize, run a business enterprise, along with its uncertainties in order to make a profit. So, first and foremost, the most important thing which sets up an enterprise from an NGO or an not-for-profit institute or from any social service that you would engage into probably with the same zeal is bottom line profit. And another very important part is the uncertainties, which probably a job will give you a kind of certainty or comfort or perceived comfort, because nowadays even the job stability is something that is kind of questionable at the moment. So something that will give you a perceived sense of security will not be something that will be in the bracket of being an entrepreneur or being enterprising. So what does it take to be an entrepreneur? We all know and we all have heard millions and millions of definition of entrepreneurship and what it takes, to be an entrepreneur. But what is the one thing that probably would set an entrepreneur apart from someone who's a job seeker? You need to have something innovative. You need to be a visionary. You need to have an ability to think differently. You need to be open minded. You need to be flexible. You need to be adaptable to change and the circumstances that will be around you at all point of time. And leadership should be there. You should definitely have knowledge of the product or the domain where you are getting into. You cannot be running a manufacturing unit without knowing nothing about a product or the manufacturing. So yes, innovation, visionary, being flexible, being knowledgeable, and leadership, all that is important. But what is that one most important thing that you think separates the entrepreneurs from everyone else?
The idea.
Idea, vision, innovation is covered, and you can probably all of you, if you have something, you can put it in the chat. I think the chat is open to everyone. So let's keep this engaging and interactive, because a post lunch session, I don't want people dozing off. Perseverance, yes, and
the mindset.
Mindset covers all these things, but what is that one thing in the mindset that is very, very important when you want to become an entrepreneur? Confidence, yes.
Ma'am, innovative thinking.
Pardon?
Innovative thinking.
Innovation we have covered. Patience we have covered. Perseverance, positive thinking. Very, very simple thing you're missing. It's the ability to take risk. You can go to the next slide. It's the ability to take risk. Your appetite to risk will decide, your journey as an entrepreneur. And nevertheless, it can never stop you from being an entrepreneur if that is what you truly want. But the ability how you handle risk or pressure, or who has seen 1992 Scam movie or series, which was there on Harshad Mehta. So there's a line there, risk mein hi ishq hai, something like that. So being an entrepreneur is basically all about that. So if you cannot take the quintessential risk of your life, to leave a safe job option, to leave probably a safe seat at your father's business, or to go and join a multinational company and be on the bench for a year. If you don't want to choose that, and you want to be choosing being an entrepreneur, putting probably some amount of your savings, your family's saving, taking a loan, going all out there, you are taking a step from being a child and a student to the entrepreneurial world. So that, my friends, is the biggest risk and the first step towards being an entrepreneur. You are ready to risk it all, ready to risk your reputation that अरे पढ़ाई में अच्छा नहीं होगा इसलिए बिजनेस कर रहे हैं, या प्लेसमेंट नहीं लगी होगी इसीलिए कुछ अपना कर रहा है, things like that. So you are ready to face all of it with the feeling that, okay, I am not doing the conventional thing and I'm doing something which is unconventional and which is not expected out of me. How am I supposed to stand tall on that? So that is a big risk. So risk does not necessarily mean the monetary risk. It is basically an emotional risk. It's a psychological risk. It's the risk of family and societal pressure that's on you. As a 23, 24-year-old, you go and join a job, everyone's like, wow, wow, wow. If you go and join a business, everyone's like, arey, ye kar paega? Is it the right thing for him to do? Why is he doing it? Why is she doing it? Like, shouldn't she just take a job and get married? What's in it for her? And many more things like that. So, first and most important, if you want to think whether you want to become an entrepreneur or ask yourself alone, give yourself some alone time and ask yourself this question, And there is nothing wrong if you don't want to take risks. Let's be honest about that. There's nothing wrong, totally nothing wrong if you don't want to take that risk right now. You can be enterprising in what you're doing right now. You can be enterprising at your job and learn and gain more confidence and gain more self-belief, gain more knowledge while you're at a job, and build yourself for the future and, your entrepreneurial dream. So, even if you're not doing it right now and you're doing it at 35 or you're doing it at 50 or even if you're doing it at 60, you're not a loser. You're building and preparing yourself for that. So I want you to know both sides of the thing. Can we move on to the next slide? So how can you define your journey as an entrepreneur, even if before you're beginning, as a student, if, you're an enterprising student, definitely there are some students you will see, who will be at the helm of all the clubs, who will be helping organizing things. It necessarily need not be being part of an incubation club doesn't make you ready for being an entrepreneur. You can be probably heading the dance club. You can be probably being the class representative. You can be probably doing a lot of things. Or you can just be a pure simple student, but you are investing your time and being true to yourself in your learning. Probably as a student, you don't want to get yourself involved in a lot of other activities, but at the same time, you want to do 4 different courses on Udemy that prepare you for what you're going to be doing next. So basically, as a student, the best thing you can do when you're preparing yourself to be an entrepreneur is test your learnings. You can apply your learning to different internships, to different projects, to doing some free work, because it doesn't matter, as a student, when you're in a student position, for most of us, all our financials are taken care of by our parents. So this is the time when you can really test where you belong. So probably what I did as a student probably more than 2 decades ago was every summer I used to do an internship in a different organization. I tried to work for a radio, like from my stream, I'm telling you. As engineers, I'm sure you will find different avenues too. So I tried to work at a radio station for a month. Every semester we used to have a 1-month break. So I tried to work in a radio station. I tried to work in a print organization. I tried to work in a magazine. I tried to work in a television thing, in post-production. And that's when I realized what probably I am good at. Because as students, our system is still a lot based on theoretical learnings. So practically, you don't know what you're good at. You might feel that you're good at numbers, but when you actually enter the finance office, you realize that it's more about just numbers. It's about a lot more other things. Secondly, when you're on a job, how do you keep building your entrepreneurial instinct while you're on a job? You keep working on your abilities. You need to keep hustling towards what your aim or goal is. If you're in a job, how can you progress from being a team or a bench person to probably a team leader? from a team leader to probably an assistant manager to, how do you build your own progress defines how entrepreneurial you are. Not being comfortable in your shoes is basically being entrepreneurial. We can go to the next slide. In between, if any of you have questions, please raise your hand or please stop me. So, when you're talking about entrepreneurial mindset, it's more about being mindful. When I'm talking about being mindful, it's about how you're going to be framing what you want to do. And how you're going to be framing or working towards your future. So, which role is suited for you? When you're saying, I want to become an entrepreneur, what kind of entrepreneur you want to become will define your roadmap. Or rather, if you will go back, trace it back, a lot of times, I don't know whether you guys did it or not, but like I did a lot of times. When in chemistry or something, the formula is not matching or something like that, instead of starting from the beginning, you like kind of go from back to front. So that's where you kind of come to know where you have missed a point or where you have missed a step. Accounts people do that, they want to make the tally happen. So they'll go make the tally happen and then, they'll be progressing from bottom to top to understand. So to make this easier for you and based on my experience, because I have worked on a product, I have a agency which is into servicing, and basically I learned a lot from my family business. So I can divide an entrepreneurial journey or where an entrepreneur is suited for you in 3 steps, probably something that I kind of tried hands-on over the decade. So what I've done over here is I've divided into 3 segments. One is the product, service, or family business. So how do you know what is meant for you? So basically, when we're talking about product, we're talking about a solution. So since you are all from the engineering background, you'll understand that better. So if you're developing a software or a code or something, you first see what's the problem and what solution you're building and what are the steps that are involved. Is it already there? What is the problem? Is the solution already there? So basically, when you need to assess the need, most importantly, if you want to become a product based, if you want to sell a product and you want to become a product based entrepreneur, you want to sell a software is also a product. So basically, you first need to assess the need. Build a niche for yourself, like what you feel is a need, how many people are doing the same thing. Second is you need to promote your idea. So marketing will be a very big portion if you're building a new product, because there is no knowledge about the product. It's a niche commodity. So you need to start from the scratch. You will not have a developed market to go and sell. Like if you are a Rasgulla maker, you know that, okay, this street, all the Rasgulla people are selling their Rasgullas. So I have to just take my bag of Rasgulla and sit there and I will sell it. That's what a Rasgulla maker or Rasgulla seller will do. But you are not that. You don't know what street is developed for you. So you will have to create and promote your idea. And in most such cases, if the product is really complicated and niche, you will need an investor. It can be in a form of an incubation center where you will need all the tools which will help you test your idea. You will need that kind of backup. You will need mentors. If your idea is really great and you end up pitching to a VC and getting up some angel investment or venture capitalist on board, you will be used to being an entrepreneur with a boss on your head. So with all these points, you need to understand, are you meant for this? Are these the things which set in your mind? Probably you would like to work on a new idea, but you don't want a boss sitting on your head. Then maybe going into a complicated product or a solution which has not been tested in the market will not be the right fit for you. You need to find out and figure out something else. And definitely this comes with high risk and high returns. Your idea can really flop or go great. So there's a data which says that 90% of the startups, technology-based startups, end up defunct or bankrupt within a year. So definitely it comes with high risk and high returns. So if you want to be one of those products that eventually get absorbed or purchased by Google or bigger companies, you need to walk the risk route. Second is service. Now, service is basically based on your skill. If you think you're a great developer and you can code anything and you can create anything, or you are great at designing and creating the right user experience is what is for you, and you can build great apps. So that's your core competency or core skill. What you can do is you can build a business around your core competency. Building a business around your core competency, A, saves you a lot of cost because you are the key component. So you kind of, your salary is basically your initial investment, you can say so. Second thing that you need to do when you're building your own business is you need to think about lead generation. Okay, you have the competency and you can create anything and everything, any app or any product that probably anyone asks you about or anyone has a query for. But at the same time, do you have the competency to generate leads? How are you going to keep the bills running? You need to build a profile for yourself because as a startup, there is only so much you can attract on your own. Plus, you have to face competition. As simple as that. If you are going to be a web developer and if you're going to start a website development company, you are going to be probably having hundreds of competitors in your own city to begin with. How are you going to be differentiating from them? And how are you going to be creating that space for yourself? How are you going to be creating that first set of 10 good customers for your company to sustain will be important questions for you to ask yourself. There will be definitely low investment because it is based on your skills, but and low risks, but at the same time, there will be high competition. Moving on to the third set is the family business. So in the family business, if you already have a family business which is well established and you think that you want to take it over, you have some great ideas and you have plans that can really transform the existing business structure, open up new opportunities, new marketings and revamp. What do you first need to do? You need to understand the cultural dynamics, because a family run organization will have will be really resistant to change. That is first thing. It will be authorities versus ideas. The authority can be in form of your own family members, old employees, older set of customers who are not willing to change with the time. So your ideas will be really put across with authority. So you need to work on really foolproof ideas. You need to assess the opportunity and treat the opportunity as a separate business unit. Only then you will be able to justify your plan to your family and take your idea forward. Do we have anyone in the audience who probably has a family business or has some questions or has some ideas to revamp the same?
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, around 90% of the startups in the technological field fail.
Yeah.
But when we talk about the non-tech startups, the firms, the restaurants and any other, they do not fail at such.
They also fail.
Yeah, but they do not fail at such a high rate, right?
They don't fail at such a high rate because probably starting them in the first place is very difficult.
Exactly. So why is there a reason why the technological startups fail at such a high rate? What is the reason? Is it because of the competition?
Firstly, in a lot of cases, it's the product testing.
Okay.
So what we see with most of the apps or software is testing. Second is because they get so heavily invested in, they cannot generate their ROI at such a faster rate.
Okay.
So I will come to that point later where, when you're a technical startup, how you can be lean and mean.
Sure.
Yeah. So I have a related question. So I'll come to it towards the end.
Sure.
If I forget, please remind me.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. We can go to the next slide. So mindset building is a process, it's about being mindful of your purpose. It is long-term perspective, and it is important to build systems to measure outcomes, So whatever you're doing, you need to measure your outcome. So even if you are the person your business depends on and you are the core competency of your business, you need to measure your outcome as well. If you are a developer and instead of sitting and spending your time on the product and development process, if you're going about doing marketing and in the end the project is getting delayed, you need to put yourself at the blame tag, because you are supposed to be doing what you're supposed to be doing. You rather hire someone or let someone else do the other things. As entrepreneurs, what the biggest mistake we do, even when we are thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, is we try to take the control. That's the most or that's the biggest mistake. You need to stick to your core competency. To be very honest, when I started my company, my core competency was content and writing, and I made sure I did that. But after 1 or 2 months, I realized that we were firefighting with leads, and then I hired a cheap resource to do the content writing for me, and I went out in the market doing the marketing job. And what resulted was a big cacophony. We had our existing clients were very upset with the content quality, and at the same time I was struggling to get business into my organization. And that's when I realized that probably I need to focus on what stands. I'm selling content. Initial first 6-8 months we were selling content and communication to our clients. When I'm selling content and communication to my clients, I can't back up from there, put a resource there, and go and do something else which I don't know anything about. So it would have been better for me. Obviously, I learned it the hard way. We lost a client, and then we lost a teammate, and then we came back and we refigured it all. But that's when I realized, as an entrepreneur, probably the older generation or our parents, when you see them, or family-run organizations, they believe in doing everything. नहीं भाई बैठा था और अकाउंट्स भी हम ही देखेंगे, क्लाइंट से भी हम ही बात करेंगे, ये भी हम ही करेंगे. When you're doing everything, you are limiting your scope to grow, because as a person you can only talk to so many people in a day. So it is very, very important as an entrepreneur, when you are working towards an entrepreneur mindset, you you need to understand what you are good at and stick to it. If you feel you want to take control of things and you want to be in control of things, it's better you join a job where you'll have a team of 4 or 5 people and you'll manage them. So that's the major difference between an entrepreneur and a manager. As an entrepreneur, you need to make yourself redundant. That is, you should not be required and the business should be functioning. Even if initially you are taking care of your core competency, when your organization grows, you need to find a better replacement to yourself, because you are the idea person. You need to generate the idea, you need to hustle, but you don't need to do the firefighting. अरे आज accounts वाला नहीं आया तो मैं bill बना के भेज रहा हूँ. अरे आज marketing वाला नहीं आया, client coordinator नहीं आया तो मैं client coordinator से बात कर रहा हूँ. अरे आज peon नहीं आया तो चलो मैं ही चाय बना देता हूँ सबके लिए. So this is something that you need to break yourself out from. And that's very, very important. And once you become not required in your own organization, it might take 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, maybe 5 years also. That's the measure of success. Your profit is not measure of your success. If you know you are the biggest billionaire and your company cannot work without you working 15 hours, then you're the biggest failure. All the big entrepreneurs, if you see, they work and spend their time on new businesses. They don't go and sit running the old businesses. Probably Ambani would set up Jio and he's exploring some other possibilities. Bill Gates is not still managing what is the next update coming to Windows. That's not his task. His task is to build the brand and build new business ideas and work on it. And that mindset he did not create, or that mindset did not come into him at the age of 20, 21. So that's a process. You need to work towards it. You need to set your priorities and your benchmarks, and then you need to work towards fulfilling those. And that's where the systems come into place. You can move to the next. So this is what I had to say, and then I saw a lot of questions which kind of cover a lot of important topics that I wanted to cover. So I'll take them each question at a time. Does that work for all of you?
Sure, ma'am.
Yeah. So first question, that is, how do you conduct a market subject about your product? So a market survey can be at multiple levels. First, if you are just out of college, kind of a startup, and you have limited resources, the best way is to create Google survey forms. Identify questions which kind of cover the problems, and which cover the solutions, which cover the area, and which cover the price point. Build a questionnaire based on these formats and float it on the internet. The biggest advantage that the generation today has is the internet. It's free. That's all I can say. So you can float a questionnaire. Second, if you are at a little advanced stage and if you have some funds, a really cool way to do your market research and at the same time build your lead generation is to run Facebook lead generation ads. For example, if you want to be selling a software that helps identify XYZ problem in your an enterprise or in your business, a software that will help you with your HR related problems. Put a tagline to it, run a lead generation ad in your audience, select your age category, okay, 25 to 40, male, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, probably from smaller cities, 2-tier cities. If you want to specify it to a geography where you are based, so that you can kind of go and meet them personally, you can specify the geography, run that ad. 4,000, 5,000 rupees max, you'll get the best research that you can imagine. If it's a really more complicated product, run the same research on LinkedIn. Little more expensive, but again, 15, 20,000 rupees, you get the best research. So the best research is basically run your idea into the market. You'll automatically know whether it will float or sink. So how do you check if you are viable in the space? So to know whether you're viable in the space, it is kind of similar to the first question. But slightly different. So to know whether you're viable in the space, you first need to identify that what you are trying to sell or the opportunity that you are trying to create, who all is it viable for? Who are the audience? Is such a solution already there? Yes, no. Is it more expensive? Is it cheaper? You need to understand that, because if the same solution is there, but it is very expensive, and if you are able to create it at a much cheaper rate, go for it. No second thoughts about it. Second is, if there is already a product that is cheaper, how can you build a niche around it and how can you make your product stand out? So you need to probably Google. If you have an idea or a product, Google. And when you're Googling, don't restrict yourself to the first and second page, because first and second page are ideally people who are working on their SEO more than they are working on their product. So they'll definitely jump up there, but you might never understand that probably a bigger competition is somewhere on the back end. So whenever you are searching about viability of your product and what works, what doesn't work, you need to run it through Google, search extensively, understand the market, ask questions. You can definitely reach out to the people. If you identify 3 or 4 companies who you think are similar to what you might be thinking, reach out to them on LinkedIn. Talk to them as a student, as a stranger. You don't need to reveal your identity too much. And understand what they are doing. If you can do it better, you can understand that as well. Third is, how do you plan long-term goals and execute it in a startup? See, you really cannot plan very, very long-term goals for a startup. I'll be very honest with you. Until and unless you have a venture capitalist or an angel investor or some bigwig on board. If you are a startup on your own, in that case, the best would be to work on yearly plans. Try to first and foremost keep a goal of your audience, that okay, in so many months I need to have so many people on board. You can plan your audience, you can plan your ROI, that I have invested probably so much amount of money and I should start getting my returns in 3 months or 6 months or 8 months, whatever your benchmark or whatever your threshold is. So these are the two goals that you should have initially. Once you are able to get past these two goals, then you can talk about having a dedicated team, having a dedicated space, and making other investments. But the way presently the things are going, one good thing or bad thing that COVID has done is it has decentralized business units. So you don't need to have an office, you don't need to go and meet people in person, which was very, very prominent or a very, very big thing probably a year ago. You need to have an office where you can call people, or you need to go and be presentable and be able to meet people. All that has gone now. So it has decentralized the system and expectations of people. So far as you have a good idea and you are able to convince people, you are good to start a business on your own. So how do you know if your startup is thriving or surviving? Depends on how much money you are making. As simple as that. Please don't let any other feel-good factor deviate you. Money is the true determinant of whether your startup is thriving or surviving. If you are having 20 plus clients and nobody is paying you, you are not surviving. You are not thriving. You are not surviving. You are drowning. So money is the most important determinant to know where you are standing, to be very honest. If you are able to pay salaries, if you are able to have more teams on board, if you are able to give yourself a better life, you are on the right track. Sorry if I am hurting anyone's feeling. If they are social and enterprises, most important thing is, if you are a social enterprise, still you have a money goal. You want to earn money to give it to someone else, to provide to someone else. In that case also, money is important. So how do you market a business? You market your business by shamelessly talking about it at any and every platform, all the free and the paid versions that you can afford. Because if you are not confident to talk and ask about business, you should be sitting in an HR seat in some corporate office. Because if you will not stand up for your business, nobody else can. So you need to be able to talk about your business. You need to be able to talk about what your work is. You need to be able to talk about how you are better than the best. You need to probably even tell them that, okay, we are better than software done from a multinational company, because we will give you customization. We'll be right there for you, and all these things. So it's really, really important that you are able to talk about your business very confidently, and that will happen only when you believe in what you're doing. Yeah. Next set of questions. Yeah. So how do you deal with criticism and move forward in a business? You need to understand where that criticism is coming from. If it's coming from your clients, then definitely it is very important that you look into your processes and systems. Because if your clients aren't happy, then it's really not working. If the criticism is coming from the society, then ignore it. Because you are disrupting them, you are troubling them, and you're doing good for yourself. So you need to understand the criticism. If it's coming from your team, again, you need to evaluate it, because an unhappy team will not give you good results in the long term. So criticism really needs to be evaluated on case basis. If probably your customer or client is saying they're not happy with the design, or they are not happy with the process or the speed, please check what you promised to deliver them. At times there are some customers, who are more demanding than the others. They will ask for peanuts and expect cashew nuts. So you need to be honest with them at that point of time, because they will do more damage to your morale than anything else. So understand your deliverables, understand what you are creating, and understand who you are creating it for. Some people can never be pleased. In that case, you just need to complete your work and move forward. You need to make your team happy, but still, if your team is not happy with what you're doing, you probably need to change the certain teammates who are kind of spoiling the atmosphere around you. So you really need to evaluate it, as per the basis. So how do you deal with an emergency? You need to have contingency plans, and you need to have backup plans. That is most important. Yeah, sorry. You need to have contingency plans. That is most important. If a supplier does not reply, or if all these things are basically the risk factor that every business holds. People might take money, not return, not give back. So you must have all your things in place. You must have your contracts in order. You must have your supplier, employees, all the sales contracts in place. You need to safeguard yourself legally as much as you can. And still, if somebody cheats you or is not coming up to the expectations, you need to have that buffer. You need to have that buffer space, even if it's for suppliers, or even if it is for your teammate, even if it's for deadlines, you need to keep that buffer in place. That's all you can do. What is the ideal age to start up? The ideal age to start a business is when you have the funds for it and the ideas. So a lot of times you might have all the ideas but not enough funds, or you might have all the funds but not a great idea. In either case, you should not rush into things, and take your time and build through it. Next question is, how do you get capital before starting a business? Before starting a business, like we said, you need to float your idea. If your idea is convincing enough, you will be able to get it. The idea has to be convincing enough to get the investment for itself. Even if you're taking the money from your parents or your family, when you tell them the idea, they should be convinced enough to give you the money. Or even if you are collaborating with friends, they should be convinced enough. So that's the first test of your idea or your business. If you cannot convince your closest of closest people with your idea, you probably cannot even find a customer then. So even if it's a bank, or even if it's an angel investor, even if it's an incubation center of a college, the first step whenever you are asking for funds is anybody's going to ask you that what are you going to do with it. So if you don't have a plan built up to show them a return on investment, nobody's going to invest in your business. And being an entrepreneur, the most important part is you should be able to make money, and you should be able to convince people that you will make money. And you need to put a timeline to it, a plan, an idea to it. All those things probably we can do it at another session, maybe, where how to prepare a basic business plan and things like that. Getting to how to allocate capital gathered in a business. So the most important part where you are allocating capital to gather a business is to spend on the product or the service or the idea itself. What is going to be your deliverable? You need first set of investment for that. So you need to build a deliverable. If you are a product, you need to start working on your product with your first set of investment. If you are a service company, you need to start investing in lead generation and creating a brand for yourself. If you are a family-run enterprise, probably you need to put that first set of investment in R&D to know where you are standing, if your business ideas are still applicable in the business. So basically there are three areas where you can allocate the first set of funds. One is on the product development itself, second is on marketing, and third is market research. So if based on your business idea, it's going to be either of the three. Yeah, I think we are running out of time. I'll take it quickly to the last slide. What are the risks and hurdles one will face when he or she starts a new business? Okay, we can write 1,000 words essay on this. So risks and hurdles you will face will be monetary, which kind of breaks your back. It can be emotional, moral, you might not have the support you would need. Third can be human resource, you might not get the right kind of people because you are a startup. You really can't afford the kind of people you want to hire. In that case, the best suggestion would be to hire the people who are happy to work with you and train them. So if you're a team of friends, you can probably decide that, okay, all of us will probably take 2 courses each in 5 different fields, so that, you know, we build our own competency. If you cannot hire someone who already has that kind of competency. Then risks and hurdles. First is, like I had covered it a little bit earlier also. Basically, you know, you need to invest in your idea, and you need to convince people. And then, you know, you need to ignore what people are going to be saying, but at the same time, test your business idea. Another very important task of risk and hurdles will be people might cheat you, you might be not paid on time. So all these are the hurdles, and the risks are plentiful. If you have any particular problem or risk related question, I can take that. What plans or steps make a startup most successful? Having the right system in place. Please, whenever you're planning your startup, please have a system in place. Don't mix your departments. Don't end up doing anything and everything that comes on your plate. That is very, very important. Having systems, having goals, having targets for yourself. That is very, very important. If you cannot keep up to the goals, risks, and targets for the first 6 months or 1 year, please don't put in more money. Because, you know, if your idea is not able to sustain on a small amount of money, it will not sustain on a big amount of money. You need to find the loophole and plug it first. Moving forward, how to obtain brand value for a new startup. The best way to obtain brand value for a new startup is to advertise and to create a brand out of yourself. That's the most important thing you can do as a startup. With social media being easily dispensable, you know, easy to use, you can do that. Go, talk, get seen, speak to a lot of people, connect with a lot of people. Most importantly, yeah, be seen and be spoken about. You can probably go out for local media coverage, or you can take up some projects, or you can take up basically some of the projects. I would not suggest take up a project for free, but try to work for a really big brand at probably a lower value for some time. Because that bigger brand as a client will help you attract more brand value. Even if it's a small project, even if it's a 1-month project, even if it's a 15-day project, even if it's probably just one code or one solution that you are probably linking up and sharing with them, try to get that one big client or brand on board. Are there any particular situations that pull you back from success? Being lazy, I think, or being complacent. Yeah, so being complacent is one thing that will really pull you back from success. You know, a lot of times when you taste easy success in the first couple of months of your startup, it kind of gets into your head. And that's where, so I had somebody asking me a point about, you know, lean structure I was talking about. Can you come on board and repeat your question if you are there?
About the failure rate?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I was just pointing out the difference of
Yeah, so you
failure
were
rate that.
asking, I got it now. So you were asking me basically about why is the failure rate high in the tech space particularly versus the other spaces. So over here, basically you need to build some parameters based on investment and early success and all those things. Now, what happens with a lot of traditional business models like restaurants, retail shops is that they don't taste initial success. So initial months are really, really tough for them. So the first 3 or 6 months decide whether a restaurant is going to be a hit or the restaurant is going to be a flop. Do you agree with me? If it clicks with people, it clicks with people. But with technology startups, that is not the case. With technology startups or some fancy e-commerce companies, the case is reverse. Initially you come up with a fantastic idea or a solution, and there is a big boom, and you get investors on board, you get clients on board, and when the ball starts rolling, you are not able to keep up with the speed, because reason can be experience, reason can be focus of the entrepreneur who's leading it, because probably he's not focusing on his core competency and focusing on other things. So it can be any of these things. So that's the reason, there are tendencies. So my suggestion to anyone who's into starting up a startup is that initially keep your spending very, very lean. You have to work like a lean mean machine basically. Your spendings should be as low. Don't depend on your investors, or don't depend on the bank money and all those things. All these are your contingency funds. You use this amount when you don't get paid on time, because what happens with a lot of technology startup is they put forward the idea is great, the concept is great, the prototype is great, and then they get investment. So whatever the clients usually do is they'll give a 20% or 30% advance, or if it's a venture capital, they'll invest some amount of money for you to keep developing your product or your prototype further. In that space, the biggest mistake that a lot of technology startups will do is they'll go and take a fancy office, they'll go and hire fancy people, they will spend a lot on traveling, they'll spend a lot of amount on branding. All this they are doing. Meanwhile, the focus from their product or the prototype that they are developing is shifted. Because it's shifted, the project that needed to be completed in 6 months extends to a year, 2 years in a lot of cases. I've heard apps which have taken three years to develop and eventually got defunct because the company only shut down. So that is very, very important and crucial part. So keep your spends very, very minimalistic, and don't let the early success get onto your head. Your biggest test in time is basically 2 years consecutively. You should be successful before you really blow it big. So there's a saying in Hindi ki jitni chadar hai utni hi pair philao. So that is important and very crucial. Even though it sounds fancy, we try to copy the Silicon Valley, but if you stick to the Indian way of operating a business, then it will be better. So finally, what's the thing you suggest to upcoming startups? So the important thing, which I've said almost all of it, basically what I would suggest to a startup, but one more important thing is have a mentor. Have a mentor or follow a business guru, follow someone who's walked the path that you want to walk. That will be really good, because instead of facing all the failures, failures lead to success, no doubt about it. You have to be brave to brace the failures, but at the same time, when you're facing the failures, you should. It will be much easier if you have someone who can already warn you about some of the failures, some of the problems, some of the mistakes. Someone who you can go and run your ideas to. Someone who's open-minded. to accept the new age order of businesses. At the same time, someone who has experience of running a business, who can help you with things you're not good at. So having a mentor is really a blessing, and you should work towards having one. Yeah, I am done for my session. I can take the questions if we have the time for them.
Yeah, we do have time, ma'am.
Yeah. So just one request, when you are asking the questions, please put on your camera. I'm used to a live audience and this is like really difficult.
So hi ma'am, I can't switch on my video presently power cut, so anyways you can't see me.
Yeah, sure.
So my question is actually when you were telling about the risks regarding the bad team, you told to hire a very good team, right?
I can't hear you. Sorry, can you be loud?
Okay ma'am. So while you were telling about the risk regarding the bad team, you
Mhm.
told us to hire the team which is really like interested in our project or something.
Yeah.
So sometimes it happens that they are interested at first, and once they join us, they lose their interest in our product, or they may lose their interest in working with us, or sometimes. So in that case, we lose almost maximum of our team because I have experienced such things. So in that case, what should we do?
See, there are two ways to approach this. First is when you are hiring a team who believes in your idea. And I understand hiring a team for a startup is a very, very difficult job because the person really needs to be driven by your idea or in dire need of money to join a startup. So it has to be either of the two cases. So once when the person joins your team, you are saying, and eventually they lose the interest. So you need to evaluate why are they losing the interest. Is it because the format of working format that you promised them, you are not able to stick to that? People leave if they are motivated. If they are joined for quick money and after joining you, after 2 3 months, they are getting better opportunity and they are jumping towards that, it's not your fault. But if you think that they were the driven lot and they are losing interest, you need to do an internal evaluation. As an employer, as an entrepreneur, we promise our team a particular working environment, freedom to work, take their decisions. Basically, people join startups so that they can have a free say, they can get credit for their work, they can grow with the organization. So you need to evaluate that which of these patterns or things that you promised them initially were you not able to live up to. In that case, you need to like I said, systems help you need to have proper system of evaluating everyone's performances including yours, and that will help you stop something like that from happening. Second is, if it's the money, probably at times as entrepreneurs we do that. We like someone, some good resource, we tell them that okay, you join me right now, I'll pay you 15,000 or 20,000. After 6 months I'll double it, I'll do this, I'll do that. And if you are not able to build up to that promise, then maybe money can be a very important factor, especially for startups. Money and the work process. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of beef going on between having a business model or having a business plan. Some people might actually opt for business plan, but some people actually go for business model instead of a business plan to attract investors. So what do you suggest?
See, like I told you, it depends on the amount of investment you are looking out for. So usually it's the investors, VCs, angel investors who want a business plan and a pitch. And in that case, you need to follow the format that they are asking for. That will be the best way to proceed. So in my case, I think a business plan is an easier go-to thing. than a business model, because in a startup, if you don't have all the departments, things, and everything planned, and if you just have an idea, a business plan is more suited.
Okay. And there's one more thing called as the new business paradigm.
What is that?
It asks all the entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, to follow passion and not money. But in the initial stages, if you solely follow the passion and do not follow the old paradigm, which is going with the flow, with the passion as well as money, then the young entrepreneurs, their startup might fail, right? I mean, most people.
See, what is the measure of success and failure?
I mean, as you said previously, if your business is able to function without you, producing a decent profits, then it is.
No. That is at a later stage. That is at a more self-actualization kind of a thing, when you look back 10 years down the line, kind of a thing.
Okay.
But on an immediate basis,
Okay.
on the first of every month, if you are not able to pay salaries, if you are not able to pay rents, if you are not able to take money home, then where will you get, or your team will get, the passion to drive it?
Exactly.
Let's be very, very honest. All these people who are writing about the paradigm and everything, they have millions tucked away in their accounts already. So we're talking about all these things. Bill Gates also went into charity after he became the richest man in the world.
Yeah.
Not when he started Microsoft.
Exactly.
So there is a place, like when you become redundant, you work on business ideas, and then you can do it. People doing charity, people doing it for passion already have millions. Ambani has Antilla, and then he does all the free cancer operations and all those things. So I'll be very blunt when I'm answering this. Money drives passion, and passion drives charity. It cannot be the other way around. You cannot do charity and then be passionate about working, and money cannot be your hobby. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Ma'am, what's your biggest factor or a decision that has helped you to be successful?
What is my
Biggest factor or a biggest decision of yours to be successful?
decision for my success? Never to give up. Because whatever you do, even if you are working as an employee, which I did for a couple of years, whether I was working with my family business, whether I was starting my own business, whether I was working as a consultant, the idea is to never give up. If you want to see yourself up there, you have to hustle. I enjoyed my job the most with Franchise India. So for a lot of people, they thought that it's a job, but for me, it wasn't a job. It was a department I was heading, and that department was my world, and I felt like a boss there. So I think that's where the entrepreneurial mindset helps. Being an entrepreneur is about owning your success and failure and taking that risk. I took risks. I took a lot of risks. There were magazines and content and directions which I had no clue about. But there are certain things that were needed to be done, and I jumped in. I took the risk. I took the risk of losing my job, but in the end, I did it. I was successful in it, and I got a promotion. But on the other hand, I could have been kicked out of my job also. So again, risk is a very important factor, a driving force, and don't give up ever. Right now the pandemic and the situation is really very hard. It is difficult to get jobs. It is difficult to start businesses. It is difficult to run businesses. But the one thing that can be driving us all towards it is being flexible. You have to be flexible in whatever you are doing. You cannot say that, okay, my dream is to probably make the most expensive app and get, the biggest package in this college and, be stuck to it. If that is not happening, what is your plan A? What is your plan B? What's your plan C? So you need to have your backup plans in place, and most importantly, you need to be driven towards getting things done. During this pandemic, we could hold our organization because we created. I'll just give you a small example. We as an agency deal with only A-listed corporates. But during this pandemic, we created small packages for startups. We created packages for traditional businesses who wanted to have a website overnight. And we made our money and we paid our salaries and we had a good time working on it. So you need to be flexible. You cannot be sticking to a formula. If there is a jeweler's shop round the corner, and if he does not change his way of doing business, he might run out of business. So, every time is a testing time for an entrepreneur, and the best way to move forward is to be flexible, adapt, evolve, and revamp yourself. Yeah.
There's this question in the chat box, ma'am. What is your favorite aspect of being an entrepreneur?
My favorite aspect of being an entrepreneur is the uncertainty that every day brings with it. So every day is uncertain, and that uncertainty is beautiful because uncertainty can give you new opportunities, and at the same time, uncertainty can bring some sudden setbacks for you. And each day is different. And being an agency, I'm not stuck with one business format. I kind of work with 20 business formats, and that's exciting for me.
Yeah, so Kirtana raised your hand. Kirtana, could you talk? Yeah.
Actually, my doubt is, ma'am, as you told, pandemic has decentralized the business,
Yeah.
so we are not able to meet our team in person. Whatever the work is there, we need to tell it in virtual medium.
Yeah.
But the thing is, what I feel is, virtually we can't make that team bond. Basically, if it's with the old people, we can make that bond, we can continue that. But if we are forming a new team, how should we maintain it in a healthy way and interactive way?
So there are things that you can do. Things that you can do in real time are the things you can do virtually. You can have a virtual lunch meeting. Everyone can get their lunches, have a lunch meeting for 1 hour. Don't talk about work. Just chill. You are a younger lot. You can have probably a virtual beer meeting, if I'm allowed to say that over here. You can bond over what movies you're watching, what things you're watching. In this pandemic, I had 3 new people join me. And today, when I see the banter between them and few of my existing teammates, it doesn't feel like that they don't know each other. The fun of having a startup is that you are going to be a young team, especially at your age. And you can always connect with each other.
Yes, ma'am, sure.
Ideas will have to change. Efforts and ideas will have to change definitely. But it's all up to your imagination, what you can do, what you can create. We see so many families having those housey and bingo games online on Zoom. What you can do with your family to connect virtually, you can do the same thing with your team. Because unless you don't consider your team your family, they will not work for you and you will not work for them. It will be very superficial.
Yes, ma'am, I'll definitely try that technique. Having lunch with them.
Sure. And the worst part is going to be you will not be able to share the lunch.
Yes, ma'am. And if the big biryani, I can't stop myself.
Yeah, exactly. So that will be fun, having a fun interaction, where you're not talking about work or projects or who did not do what work, but just generally talking. Ask them about their families, ask them about what they are facing, ask them about the struggles of working from home. It can be too much.
Yes, ma'am, sure.
I'm the mother of a 5-year-old, and when the 2 months I was working from home, I was going crazy.
Ma'am, could you share one experience of that?
So, funny experience would be that my sister came visiting me, and because my son has been with me all through the pandemic, whether I'm working from home, now I'm coming to office, so most of the times he comes to office with me. And then I had my sister visiting and she had to go, so we had to lie to him that your Masi has a meeting and she needs to go there. So he's like, no, she doesn't need to go there. She can do a Zoom meeting. She can present also from Zoom. So I had my 5-year-old say that, and that's when I realized that, the pandemic is probably changing everyone.
Kids are becoming smart.
Yeah. So we all have funny experiences, but that's what, take things lightly, in humor, be human to your team. A lot of times when we used to have calls, we could hear cooker whistles in the background. And instead of saying that, okay, put that volume low, why is there so much background noise? You can just ask them, "Kya re, aaj khane mein kya bana rahe ho?" Things like that, because everyone is stressed. Everyone is taking up more than they can handle right now. So when you're being human and when you're giving them that space, it makes you a better leader and it gets you closer to your team. So the next time they will not lie to you. They will say that, okay, I'm just taking a nap. I'll cover this work in the night. And you should be acceptable to that. Yeah.
No, Kirtan, unmute yourself.
Ma'am, what's your opinion about SWOT analysis?
SWOT analysis is good. When you're beginning, it's good, and probably you can do it every couple of months to see where you're standing, because nothing is a constant, you might have something as a threat or as a weakness right now, and maybe it will change. So as an entrepreneur, to be very, very honest, I do a mini SWOT analysis probably every week or every 3 days.
Every 3 days?
Like, I do a mini SWOT analysis. So I have a diary and I keep scribbling things on that. So they are basically what we are doing good, what we are not doing good. So like, not a very detailed strength, opportunity, weakness kind of a thing, but the goods and the bads, the things that need to be worked on, the things that they're going fine. And what are the prospects we can work on? So that's your SWOT analysis in real time.
That's really great, ma'am. For now, I'll try for every month.
Yeah. You make your team do one also. That will be fun.
Yes, ma'am. After every project, I'll try to have a SWOT analysis session with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Sai Kiran asked you, so we have an idea, but another company has already executed it, but not up to the mark. So what should we be doing? Should we go ahead with the idea and make it even better to the audiences, or should we just quit the idea?
See, you need to evaluate what is the cost that goes into an idea. If you can probably not risk your entire saving and existence on that idea, and you can work on that idea, better it and project it before the existing company makes correction. Because while you're working on the idea, the existing company will not be sitting still. They will be working to improvise on that idea, right? So if you can beat them before they improvise, make corrections, if you can launch it, perfect it, and be there before them, you should do it. But if there is a lot of risk involved, I would suggest you wait, float the idea internally to a smaller audience, check the viability, check if you are getting the right returns that you are expecting out of it, and then work on it. Probably approach their existing customers who are unhappy with them.
Definitely. So are there any questions, guys? Another question, when we talk about personal risks, I'll give you an example for better understanding. If a partner is not really encouraging us into starting a business because she thinks it might be a risk. When we're talking about...
Is it there in the question?
No, it's not. It's not there. So if you're talking about personal risk, if the person is married and the so is not really into starting up a business, the so thinks it's a high rate risk. You can lose your savings, everything that you've earned until now. then should we go ahead with the idea or should we really stop? Because family comes first in many of the cases.
So you are saying that if you have a business idea and your spouse is not supportive of it, what do you do?
Yeah.
So first, if you are not able to convince your spouse, you need to look deeper into the idea. Point number one. Point number two, if you think you would know your spouse and your family members better, you would know their nature better. Some people genuinely cannot even take 1% risk. If you feel that you really have the opportunity and everything standing on your side, you need to probably talk to your spouse, or for that matter even your parents, and ask them for some time. Like, tell them that, okay, give me 3 months to prove myself, or give me 6 months to prove myself. Or you can probably say that, okay, I'll not quit my job right now, I'll work on that idea and then take a step in probably 1 month or 2 months time. If your spouse is from the same field as you and still they are not convinced, then probably there is something amiss with your idea. But if they are not at all from the entrepreneurial background and still they are resisting, then you need to probably convince them and buy time. Eventually, if you cannot convince your core group of people, you will never be able to convince a customer, because a customer will be much harder to convince and much harder to get the money out.
Exactly.
Yeah. So don't fight and don't run away from home and start a business. Don't do that, because you need your support system when you are becoming an entrepreneur. Life gets suddenly very unpredictable. So you need your core group of close friends and family and spouse and parents by your side when you're stepping into this. And that's your litmus test, guys. If you cannot convince them, how will you convince probably 10 other people to pay you 10 lakh rupees if you cannot convince one person to say yes to you?
Ma'am, are you a morning person or a night owl like that?
I am a midday person.
Oh.
So I can't get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I cannot sleep at 2 o'clock in the night. So I use my full day.
Does that affect your schedule, ma'am, or the mind, or anything that?
No, so I think if you're talking about the time or space when I sit and think about my work or my schedule, is when everyone else is fallen asleep. So yeah, you can call me a night person, but then it doesn't go beyond 12 o'clock. Yeah. So by the end of the day, I'm an exhausted mom also, so I sleep.
Yeah. Okay. So any more doubts, guys? We'll end up the session. So if there's any questions, you can ask right now.
So if you have any questions, you can mail it to Nithya. She'll send it over to me and I'll try to get in touch with as many of you as I can.
Yes, sure, ma'am.
Yeah.
So, sir, shall we end up the session?
Thank you very much, madam. Before they actually
I'm sorry, sir, I can't hear you.
Are you able to hear me right now, ma'am?
Yeah, better, sir. Thank you.
Yes. So from my side, and especially from the DSC, as a faculty lead, I would like to thank you very, very much for accepting our request. Of course, my students will talk, but personally, I feel this session could have been something which should be offline than online, because a lot of interaction that students could have and they have learned. Majority of my students, just to make a point, they are more interested towards entrepreneurship. They have a lot of ideas. They have a lot of passion towards starting companies, and we can see the people who are on video. They are already, few of them are entrepreneurs. They have started businesses on their own and they are going forward.
Yes.
So yes, this kind of sessions definitely help them to see what they exactly are, whether they are in the right direction or not. So hopefully, if the pandemic situation we are out of this, definitely we'll have one more session offline, madam, to majority of our students.
Sure.
So thank you.
for the opportunity, sir. And just as a reminder, guys, have your systems in place and don't give up on the money.
Sure, ma'am. Sure, definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, Nithya, please go ahead.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you,
sir.
thank you,
Yeah,
sir.
I'll be giving a vote of thanks, ma'am.
Acha, okay, oh, sorry.
Yeah. So I, on behalf of the DSC chapter and InCube, Anurag University, extend a hearty vote of thanks to our speaker, Ms. Archana Purohit, for her presence and contribution to make this seminar exemplary. I must not forget to thank the organizing team, volunteers for working hard for the last few days to make this seminar so successful. I congratulate all the participants for their active participation and interaction, which portrayed their zeal for entrepreneurship. Lastly, I wish nothing but the best to everyone present there today. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would like to thank Nitya on behalf of everyone here. She's been really working hard and following up with me since mostly over, I think, 2 months now, Nitya.
Yeah, ma'am. 2
Yeah,
months.
and she's really very diligent. Thank you. Thank you, Nitya.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah, thanks to my organizing team. They have switched on their videos right now. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, I can
Thank
see
you,
all of
sir.
them.
Ravinder Reddy, sir, you helped us a lot with all the permission letters and everything. You made us so much flexible for conducting this webinar. And thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.